Pixelkin.
My name is Zach Aikman. I'm the lead engineer at 17-Bit. 17-Bit is a small studio here in Seattle. We released a game called Skulls of the Shogun a while ago. It's a turn-based strategy game for mobile devices. And right now we're working on a game called Galaxy, so I'm not sure. It's coming out on PlayStation 4 in a few months, and then PC shortly thereafter.
My name is Katie Chironis, and I'm the game writer at Her Interactive. We make the Nancy Drew PC adventure game series, and we have for 16 years.
16 years, wow. Hi, I'm Grant Roberts. I'm the lead game designer at Eline Media. We just made Never Alone, Kishima Ingechuna, which is the story of an Alaska girl and her Arctic fox companion. We worked really closely with the Inupiaq people. Anyway, you can probably read about it online.
Hi, I'm Kathy Roeder, and I'm the designer at Her Interactive. And like Katie said, we've been around for 16 years, and our 32nd title is going on pre-order next week.
Right. We're supposed to say that. Yeah, it's going on pre-order next week, Sea of Darkness.
Hi, and my name is Dima Viryovka, and I'm the art director at Eline Media Seattle. We were working together with Grant. I was responsible for the art and all the visuals. Grant was responsible for design. So I've been in the industry more than 15 years, working on different kind of games, but that's probably the most meaningful for me, so I'm very proud about it.
Awesome, great. So we're going to start off by just having everybody talk about their discipline and how that fits into the bigger picture of game development. And I know Grant is actually a designer now, but he has experience in production, and that's what he's going to talk about. So Zach, would you like to start?
Sure. So I'm an engineer, which means I write computer code, which to me is magical because it's sort of an incantation, a spell that you have to know, and if you get it right, then stuff happens on the screen, and it's one of the most rewarding experiences that I can think of. It's sort of like building a car. It's an analogy that sort of works. The car can look really, really pretty. You can have a nice interior, but if there's no engine in the game, the car's not going to run. The game's not going to do anything. And so that's sort of my job, is to make the game do stuff. And then we rely on artists and designers to make it look pretty or to do fun things. But at its core, that's sort of my day-to-day focus is on making the game run and do things.
Katie?
So as a writer, I get to come up with the story and the characters for most games. I've done everything. I mean, sometimes it's as cool as getting to write the story and the characters. Other times I've named motorcycles for a motocross game. I came up with over 100 sword-themed motorbike names, so I can put that on my resume. I have cleaned up dialogue that came over from Japan, so it was translated in English by a Japanese team, and I was like, I think this is what you need, and then rewritten for them. I've done love letters for an Xbox One game. I wrote tons and tons of love letters. Sometimes I've been called on to fix, like a game team will be like, yeah, so we created this game, and in the middle of level 3 there's a giant volcano, and I'm like, okay, why? And they're like, well, we were hoping you could tell us that because we don't actually know. So then my job is to come in and patch that up and figure out why the player's there and what they're doing. Currently I get to write all the mysteries that Nancy Drew goes on. She's a teen sleuth and she gets to solve all these fun cases. I create the culprits, I create some of the circumstantial evidence in the world, like why characters are doing what they're doing, and that's a lot of fun.
So let's talk about production.
Yes, we'll talk about production. I'm not going to talk about design. As I used to be a producer for many years in the game industry before I made the jump to design full time, and as a producer, it felt like the job was mainly making sure that the game came out correctly, making sure that everybody had what they needed to do to make the game. Making sure that the schedule was set up correctly, that we weren't letting the scope of the game get too big for what we knew we had to deliver, and just making sure we hit each one of our milestones along the way. We have you spend a certain number of months saying at the end of June we're going to make it so that there's 100% of the art is in the game and 50% of the design and all of the features are done, and then the next milestone you'll say, okay, everything is in the game. Everything needs to be fully in, and we're just going to polish it from then on. We'll just be bug fixing and polishing. So figuring out what's going to go into each one of those milestones with the leads like Dima and like me, if we're cheating a little bit here, and figuring out which goes in each milestone, and just making sure that everybody has what they need to make the game, basically.
Okay, so as the designer, I work with Katie on just creating that story and the world, but then also I'm in charge of all the environments, what's in each environment, where clues are laid out, what puzzles are, the actual puzzles themselves, logic. So the designer really is sort of the architect. You lay out all the blueprints for everybody and hand it off to the teams, but kind of keep your eye on it the entire time to make sure that the overall is still cohesive.
Yeah, and as an artist, it's pretty much probably everybody understands what artists do, but in my case, I drew a lot every day. I kind of like starting my day with some kind of drawing, some kind of inspiration, and that's something that I will give to the other artists to model or to animate. So, I mean, being an artist in the industry is probably one of the, I mean, in my opinion, one of the most amazing experiences, just because you do something that this job allow you to do something that you really like to do, to dream and to draw. What you can ask better than that. Like I really love that. But before, I mean, working in companies like a Zipper Interactive, it was like bigger company where it's like 150 people work, and my role was a modeler. So it's like very specialized work. Like I did just only character models and modeling that, and that was amazing too. But being like working and see the full thing, like what's on the screen, and control everything, lighting and visual effects and animation, everything what you see, it's kind of it's a treat. It's very amazing.
Cool. So, do you guys want to share how you got to your jobs? I know in the game industry, sometimes the degree isn't always matching the job. So if you guys could just give a little background of maybe your previous experience and how you sort of moved around, starting with whether or not you had a degree or any formal education.
Well, first, I guess I knew from an early age what I wanted to do. I knew I liked programming. I know I liked video games. And it made sense to sort of merge the two. And so I came up here from Oklahoma, specifically to Seattle, to Redmond, to attend the DigiPen Institute of Technology, which is a school where you get to specialize in video game development or video game art. And so I earned my degree there, and then I had a brief period where I worked at about 8 different studios in 4 years shortly after graduating. So I sort of got to get a good tour of the industry and see a bunch of different facets of it. In recent years, I've settled down at 17-bit. I've been here for about 2 years now. But yeah, that's how I got my start. I went to school for it. I'm not going to say I don't recommend it. There's still lots of good things you can learn by going to a specialized school for something like that. But nowadays, there's so many resources out there that, especially if you're learning to code, there's tutorials, there's people you can talk to, there's community college classes, there's lots of ways to obtain that knowledge without having to be several $1,000s in debt. So don't just go to school because you want to program. Look at other options first.
So I always knew that I wanted to write in some form. When I was young, I would write stories and I would play a lot of video games, and my parents would say, A, go outside and make some friends and stop playing video games, and B, you're never going to get a real job if you're a writer. I proved them wrong. And I went to college to get my degree in creative writing, which maybe not the most marketable degree, but it ended up working out for me somehow. My secondary degree was in human-computer interaction, which is basically like designing the interfaces that we interact with when we use any piece of software or hardware. And that was going to be my like make money degree in case the writing thing didn't work out, which it did. I got really lucky. I got hired at Microsoft as a narrative designer out of college and did stuff with them for a while, and then went on to do more design writerly type of things. I started off mostly in design, and I did a lot of design work up front because it is a very slow market for writing jobs. Like there just aren't many. Most of the time, you're just going to be a game designer who happens to do some writing. I'm very lucky that my current company had a writing position open, and I love what I do, but it's very common for writers to also be game designers.
That's actually in the midpoint of my career. That's what I was. I was a game designer and writer. But when I started, I kind of similar experience to Zach, where I knew I always wanted to love playing games, and I knew from a young age that I wanted to make them. Back in my day, that for the most part meant that you did have to have a programming background for the most part. So I majored in computer science when I went to high school and college, and then discovered that I wasn't really very good at it. and switched over to journalism instead to try to get to get into the creative writing thing that you're talking about. Eventually, I bounced around a little bit. I was a writer and editor for Next Generation magazine back in the late 90s. And then eventually I got a job as a QA tester and worked at my first game development studio that way. Very quickly became an associate producer. And as an associate producer, I just tried to do whatever needed doing, tried to help out with everything around the office, with recording voiceover, with organizing assets, that kind of thing. And that eventually turned into a producer job at the same company. So I would say that a lot of the people that I work with these days who are producers, some of them went to DigiPen as well, and kind of learned along the way that they really enjoyed the production side of it and trying to make sure that the game happens, or they have a passion about art or engineering or design, and they do producing with that other stuff on the side. But yeah, there's at this point, there are companies or there are institutions that I believe offer degrees in game production, but I was not one of the ones who went through that, so I'm not sure.
Can you talk for a little bit too, just about QA, because I know that's commonly the entry point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is, and it's kind of a cliche, the QA guy who works his way up, right? But it is a cliche. That was not a rhetorical question. So yeah, I got my start in QA, and there's a very low barrier to entry for QA. You can if you like playing games. Generally, you can test games. That doesn't mean that you'll make a good tester, though, because somebody who is a good at QA has a really critical eye for bugs, but also is able to separate something that's very clearly a bug, something that's going wrong in the game, versus something that is more subjective, like a design issue, or they're very good at finding the correct kind of level of bugs that people are looking for. Like, okay, we know that this part of the game isn't working too well, so let's not focus on that. Let's try to really dig in on this one and get there. So there's not really a DigiPen or Full Sail or Carnegie Mellon degree in QA, as far as I know. It's more like you would get your start at a company at that position, and then hopefully, if you want to do something else, you work your way up from there, or you stay. I've worked with a lot of great people in QA who stay in QA because they love it, and those are generally the best kind of QA people to work with because they have a real passion for it. So.
Okay. Kathy?
Well, so far I'm the oddity on this panel. I did not go to school planning to work in the gaming industry. I actually wanted to be more of an animator in traditional animation and 3D animation. So I went to a liberal arts school and got an art degree, which wound up serving me very well as a designer. I think one of the best lessons I've learned about design is that the more you experience, the more you learn, the more you just have your eye on different aspects of life, the better you can do your own job. Because you come back and you realize, oh, those math classes I took, that English, that foreign language, the art, the music, you can draw on all of it to bring it in and tell a better, stronger story.
Cool. Dima?
Yeah, and you're not alone. So I have also traditional artist background. I graduated from St. Petersburg Academy of Art with masters in fine art and architecture design. So I never thought that I would be working in the game industry. My dream was always to be doing the same thing with my dad. My dad is a sculptor, so working with the actual real materials, with the bronze and marble, carving marble and things like that. And that's what I did when I was a kid. So to me, it was very natural. But after graduation, it happened. I just got a job working as a toy designer and was designing toys and actually sculpt them for various clients like Disney, Hasbro, and Mattel. And back then I met like a lot of people who were kind of from the game industry. They introduced me to the industry. They showed me how to actually model things digitally on the computer. I got very excited. I mean, not like very excited, like I wanted to try how it feels because they like, you would be good at that. Honestly, it wasn't the easy path for me because it wasn't that kind of natural. It's still way easier for me to do things from clay than model that on the computer. But after, I don't know, 5-6 months and a lot of sleepless nights, I kind of started to enjoy the process. I started to enjoy the process of actually modeling. And I'm talking like 15 years ago, the software wasn't as intuitive as it is right now. So now like people have ZBrush and like very, really nice tools where you really model almost like you would model from clay. But back then it was like modeling in NURBS, and you do a lot of calculation and math before you really do anything creative. So it was a little like challenging for me. In fact, actually, before I do something on the computer, I model something and put it in front of me, like from Craig, and then turn it around and look at it and then model. It was like very weird kind of transition. But after I kind of learned the digital sculpting, I create my portfolio and applied for different companies. And I started my first company where I worked with was Zipper Interactive. And as I said, I was a character modeler for a while. After 5 years, I became a lead artist because I learned so many processes. I learned animation effects and worked with a cinematic group. And here I am right now. So I'm an art director, so directing pretty much doing what I've been doing for 7 years.
So if you had to narrow it down, what is the one best thing that you liked about your job? And anybody can start. Whoever has an answer.
I'll start.
Okay.
It might sound, it might be an off-the-wall answer, but I'm not sure how true it is of other industries that you can get a job in or other jobs that you can work in. But with video games specifically, in order to get a job and to keep a job and to be in the industry as long as we have here, you really have to be good at what you do. There's not really room for people who are like, they're okay, they're like a C+. You know, they generally won't survive for long. So one of the things that I enjoy the most is being able to work with people who are the best at what they do, all of them pretty much. You know, like every day you get to go and be inspired by people like Dima, who create just incredible work, and everybody else kind of has to raise their game to keep up with it. So that's really, it's something that keeps me inspired every day I go to work. And it's you know, it's not like I get to go make video games all day every day. Like that's the answer you'd expect. But no, for me, really, it really is being able to work with the best and the brightest. You know.
Cool. I guess I'll go. So one of the things that really got me into video game writing as opposed to regular writing is that if I write a story, like if I write the script for Saving Private Ryan, I'm basically putting the viewer on a railroad track and funneling them through this experience along one string, right? Like you get to see one version of this world. But if I'm creating a video game world, I get to put you inside the box that is Saving Private Ryan's world and let you go anywhere you want, effectively, within the constraints of the design. So for me, that was really cool because instead of, you know, writers always want to create worlds. We want to create characters that live within this world. And making a video game is the truest form of creating a written world. Like it really is a physical place that exists that you can explore. And to me, that's the best thing about what I do versus writing for fiction or TV.
I'll go ahead. Sort of two answers to this question. One is more programming focused, the other is more general game development. But for programming, I get to solve puzzles every day, and I like puzzles. I like encountering that obstacle and then thinking about the problem and then trying a solution, and eventually you overcome it. And it's that day after day after day. And that might sound a little boring, but it's actually really rewarding because the higher that level of frustration gets when you finally overcome the obstacle, it's immense relief and satisfaction, and it's a rush. I don't know how else to describe it. It's so much fun. But in a more game development general sense, seeing someone play your game, especially if it's a game that you've had a direct role in making, you're not just sort of a cog in a team of 80 people. Having someone play your game and smile or laugh or tell you how much they love it, it's even better than the thing I get when programming. It's the most amazing feeling to have someone validate your work and enjoy it and know that you were able to interact with someone indirectly in that way. It's pretty magical.
Kathy or Dima?
For me, it's actually the experience of getting to learn something new on every single title. All of our Nancy Drews are themed, and for me, one of the first things I do is I literally go to the library and pick up all these books on whatever topic we're doing, and I've found so many great things that I never knew existed simply from our job. And to know that I'm getting to introduce other people to those items as well, it's such a great feeling.
Yeah, and for me, it's pretty much the work allowed me to draw, and like I said, like if you really like to do that, that's the most enjoyable thing. But at the same time, to collaborate with other people, being an artist doesn't mean like I just talk to the artists. We work together with everyone. We work with the musicians, with the writers. Specifically on the last game, Never Alone, we're flying a lot to Barrow, just like the northern place in Alaska, and talking to so many different people, and that was like very inspiring. And at the very end, you're creating the game that people, they said it multiple times to us that they're very proud to what we did, and that makes them proud to be an Alaska native. That's why I wanted to go to work, to make somebody's happy.
Great. So on the flip side of that, what would you guys say is the most challenging thing that you're dealing with?
Right now, we're in the last 2 months or so of development, and there's a saying in the industry that the 90% of the work takes place in the last 10% of the project, and that's pretty accurate. It's not even that there's a lot of work; it's that it's the hard stuff. It's the stuff that you've pushed off till the end of the project because it's not as important, to getting the game stood up and working, but it's still very important to the player's experience. And this includes things like, if another player signs in while one person is playing, what happens if you disconnect the network cable while the game is running? Does it crash? Like, there's all sorts of edge cases and things that you have to test. And that's the sort of stuff that no one really wants to deal with, but you sort of have to slog through it just to get the game out. So that's probably my least favorite, most challenging part.
I'm going to be honest here, the game industry is about 10 to 15% women, depending on who you ask. That's probably my least favorite part of what I do. Before, obviously we're at a company called Her Interactive, so we're pretty good on that front right now. But in the past, I've frequently been in auditoriums of 100 people where I was one of 3 women. I have gone to industry conventions and people assume that I'm somebody's girlfriend or somebody's wife. I went to PR, when I worked at Microsoft, I went to a PR tour for the new Xbox, and I was repping a game that I had been a designer on, and people were like, can I speak to somebody from the actual development team? I was like, hey, I was actually one of the lead designers on the project, and they were like, no, you weren't. So that's the kind of thing that I think that more women coming in and contributing to the field can really help with, but so far that has been my least favorite part of the field. It's getting better every single year, and I think by the time it's about 5-6 years from now, I think it won't even be an issue anymore, but yeah, that's definitely a downside.
For me, both of what Zach and everybody is saying is true. That's also the challenging part for me. But for me, at least from the design side and from the production side, it's working on something that being really passionate about something and knowing that something is really great and you want to include it in the game, and everybody really loves the idea, but you just don't have time to do it, or you don't have enough time to finish it, or you don't have enough time to make it as good as everything else is in the game. So you get 90% of the way there on something, almost all the way there, and then you just have to put it in a drawer, even though it's really great. So that's learning to let go is one of the big challenges of this business, I think.
Well, my most challenging part is actually the non-linearity of our games. And we have a lot of branches, and as the designer, I have to make sure that all the changes aren't going to affect everything else down the line. And while it is the most challenging part, I actually love it. Unlike a lot of these where people are saying it's also their least favorite. It's most challenging, but it's also it's such a great organizational logic puzzle that I always enjoy it, even if it does take forever.
So probably the most challenging part is like time, because usually you wanted to make something really awesome, something that you really feel proud, and you always feel like it's not enough time to do that. That probably it's true for all of us. But another thing is, as good as collaboration, it's awesome from one side, but sometimes some people are not really willing to collaborate, and some people really wanted to do certain things the way they wanted to do it. So then it's very challenging to convince or to come up with some kind of a solution that we all like. So that's the challenges.
Okay, so what advice would you guys give to people who want to get into games? I'll kind of move that along 2 paths. So young people who haven't gone to school yet, and maybe some other people who have gone to school and realize that they want to work in games, but they don't exactly have the traditional degree. So who wants to start there?
I can start. For younger kids, for kids who are going to school or about to go to school, I guess for programming, study math a bit, study physics if you can, but honestly, beyond algebra level math, like calculus isn't used very much in games. It is if you want to do physics, coding, and things like that, but for the most part, it stops at algebra. And then there's something called linear algebra, which is like algebra but a little more complicated. It uses vectors and matrices and stuff that you use for graphics rendering, but you can get by doing most programming stuff with just algebra as the highest level math. It's really, programming is more of a logic thing than a math thing. A lot of people think that you have to be really good at math to be a computer programmer, but that's totally not the case, because I'm not very good at math, and I'm an okay programmer, so that's proof of that. If you're out of school and you're looking to get into the industry, I have a friend actually that I met at the Game Developers Conference last year, and he was a roadie for the bands at the drive-in in Sparta in El Paso, Texas. He had zero programming, game development experience at all. And one day he just decided, I want to make my own game. And so he reached out to Sony and to other publishers, and they sent him a developer's kit. He got a copy of Unity online, which is a free game development engine that's super great. I think my game and you guys are using Unity too? Yeah. Unity, and he started teaching himself how to code, and now he has a game that's running on the PlayStation 4 and the Vita, and it's not released yet, but he came from literally nothing, from no knowledge, no experience, no industry contacts, and now he's working on a game that's actually, I played it, it's fun, and it's clearly the work of someone who hasn't done this before, but it's leaps above what you would have expected from someone who didn't go to school for this sort of thing. So you can do it. Anybody can make a game, so just try.
So if you're young and you haven't been to school yet, the conventional wisdom I got growing up was play a lot of games if you want to make games. But I actually tend to think that leads to, I think it's a good thing to play a lot of games if you want to make games, but sometimes it leads to cyclical design, where people who look at video games right now see it as a bunch of Star Wars ripoffs and Star Trek ripoffs and Indiana Jones ripoffs and that kind of thing. And that's because a lot of the people that make games grew up just playing those things and watching those movies and that kind of thing. I want game designers in the next generation who were pro athletes. I want game designers who are artists first and poets and have learned, or equestrians, have done all this weird stuff. The best art comes from life. It doesn't come from looking at the art that's already come and rehashing it in a bunch of different forms. So I actually think trying to do as many different weird things as you can along your journey is the best possible preparation you can have to be somebody who makes any kind of creative media, let alone games. When it comes to people who are out of school, there are so many free engines available right now. This is truly the revolution for tools like this. Unity, Twine, if you can't even write a single line of code, but you can write, Twine is a free engine that requires zero coding experience, lets you create interactive stories and adventures. There's so many tools out there that all you need to know how to do is drag and drop things. You don't even need to know how to code to make awesome games. And I would just go online and Google any of that stuff and get started making stuff today.
Yeah, it's literally exactly what I was going to say. No, it's true. That starting from if you're out of school, like Katie says, there's Unity, Game Maker, Twine, Minecraft. You can make stuff in Minecraft still. Even Unreal, the Unreal Engine now is becoming free for people to experiment with. There really has never been a better time to just do it. If you want to make a game, there are very few excuses now to actually to starting to make a game. If you are young and haven't gone to school yet, what Katie says is true. Don't just get stuck in a rut of playing games and assume that'll be good enough to get started. You really need to, when you play those games, you need to look at them while you're playing them and understand why you're having fun making them. Understand why, when you don't have fun with this, why that's the case. Is that a bug that's happening, or is it because there was a weird thing going on? To just try to develop a kind of critical eye while you're playing them. I guess maybe that's more for design and the creative side of it, but I assume it applies just as well to engineering and art as well. Develop those life experiences. You have to play well with others. That is incredibly important. And that's something that, if you're just making a game on your own, if you're just doing something in Unity or Game Maker or Twine, it doesn't necessarily teach you how to work with other people. And working with other people, like Dima touched on earlier, and other people have mentioned, it's incredibly important. Sometimes, in some cases, it's more important than how talented you are is how you work with other people. So make sure that you play nice with others, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, seeing as how both of the two have had design experiences have already gone, but they've hit most of the design side of it, and it's really, for kids still in school, the most important thing you can do is just to continue to learn and take as many experiences as you can, both in the classroom and outside of it. Travel if you can, read, play puzzles, not just games, but logic stuff that trips your mind and makes you critical thinking, and just everything you can do to just experience life, because everything you try just gives you more fodder to pull from when you go in to create. And for out of school, don't forget too, I mean, there are so many communities anymore where you can just go, and there are dev nights and game nights and online or in bars. Just, hook up with your local communities and get together.
Yeah, you guys all have pretty much answered. I don't need to say anything, but yeah, that's true. I have opportunity. I review a lot of portfolios, a lot of artist portfolios, and you can easily say, like, this guy is passionate about what he does, and the other one is just trying to be as everybody else. And that comes to draw from nature, draw from your own feelings, draw something that you really like to do, dream, and just be yourself. Try to find something that you really, really like to do, and you're ready to spend like 12 hours a day doing that, because that's what game development is. So if you not really liking it, would be hard, and I not really recommend you to do something that you don't like. So the most important thing to find like something that you can do with ease, and something that you can hone on that and become like a master. And that's pretty much it. Like if you can do that, you'll be a happy person.
All right, great. So I think we're going to open up to questions, unless you guys had anything else you wanted to add. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, for Dima and Zach, if you could talk just a little bit about the tools you use, the hardware, software, programming languages to do your job.
So I can talk. It's really changing. Like the game industry, like evolving so fast. So like the main tool for the artist is probably Maya. It's like the tool where you can do almost everything. You can model, animate, do special effects. You can do cinematic, everything there. But it's some special tools, for example, like ZBrush, that's the tool awesome for modelers. It's allow you to do organic modeling. Now you can do and mechanical modeling. So for people who actually modelers, they use a lot of that. And it's a lot of small other tools that kind of helping out, like 3D code and other little things. But if you're a concept artist, probably all the concept artists using Photoshop. It's still the main tool, and that's what we use every day. That's what I use all the day. That's pretty much it.
What type of operating system do you use that on?
I use PC. We use PC in the company, but at home I use Mac. So it really doesn't matter. It's the same software, so it's no really difference. As long as the computer powerful enough, so you can have a lot of layers. That's it.
So we use Unity at work. Unreal is another popular engine. Crytek is another popular engine. But Unity is good because it uses C# as the main programming language. You can also use, they call it Unity script. It's like JavaScript, but everybody I know in the industry that uses it professionally uses C#. Unity is it's a tool. You don't model in it like you would in Maya or in 3ds Max, but it's in it you can create scenes for your game. And scenes are sort of like locations. So a scene might be this auditorium, and then you would model your stuff in 3ds Max, and then bring those objects in and place them in Unity, and then assign scripts to objects, like putting a script on a chair, so that when someone uses it, the chair opens up and you can sit down. I know a lot of teams still write their own engines using C++ and C. It feels like it's becoming less and less common, except among AAA studios that already have years and years of tech that they don't want to move to something like Unity, because it's great for general purpose development. But when you really want to make a blazingly fast 60 FPS game that runs on PlayStation 4 or on Xbox, you really need to get rid of all the cruft of C# and other high-level languages and do something very, very close to the middle. So C++ is still, it's not extinct yet. It's still used in lots of places.
Okay, no Java?
Really? Not really, yeah.
Interesting.
All right, any other questions?
A question about branding your own company and say getting a business license. How would you do that?
I can actually speak about that one. So this isn't for my day job, but I run a company on the side that's a personal thing just with friends. So the first thing you're going to want to do is file for an LLC with the state of Washington. I used a company called LegalZoom that a lot of people seem to use, and it's like $300 to file your business. And then you need to get a business license with the city of Seattle and the state of Washington. And that really should be everything that you need to get up and running. And then you got to file taxes every year. Don't forget to do that. That's fine. It's actually really easy and relatively cheap in Washington.
Cool. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, the game industry kind of has a reputation for like having really long hours and stuff. So do you guys find that's true? And if so, like, do you just not mind it because you really love what you're doing, or what?
I see everybody like debating about giving the real answer or a pretty answer.
I've been to places where either one of those is true. Like when I worked with Zach at the Amazing Society a few years ago, we were really good about sticking to a schedule and really good about planning. So we almost never had to do any crunching. Is that true? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, but it's also worth pointing out that the studio did shut down.
There's a reason why we're at two different places now, because they don't exist anymore. But so that was true. To me, it generally tends to come down to planning beforehand. If you do it right, if you try to plan for things, and for the most part, you won't have to work 18-hour days for years. But there's always going to be, like Zach says, the last 10% is where all the work comes in. So it's bound to happen every once in a while. And I tend to do okay with it because I'm really passionate and everybody else is really passionate about what they're doing. So it can be a little trying at times, but it's definitely still a reality of this business. And especially for the big AAA companies, like in this area, like Bungie and 343 and places like that, they'll work, 6 days a week, 16-hour days for months at a time. And that's just the way that's hearsay. That's what I've heard that they do there. So that can be a lot tougher to deal with than, just these, like, we're gonna work this weekend and that's gonna be what makes or breaks this certain feature or this game. But yeah, I don't want to monopolize the rest of it.
As a wife/widow of a 343 employee, I will validate what you just said about the crunch. But at the same time, I wouldn't want my husband to be doing something that he didn't love. Like, if he could come home at 5 every day, but he was programming databases for a bank, he would be miserable. So from the flip side of it, from a family member, like at least for me, even though it's extremely difficult to deal with the crunch time, in the end it's worth it because you know that the person is doing what they really want to be and that they love it.
I actually, I've been lucky. I've never had to work crunch. I've had to work 50-hour weeks, but nothing worse than that, really. And that was just for short periods of time. My boyfriend works at 343, which makes the Halo games, and he does come home at 10 p.m. every day. But actually, I believe that crunch is going to be the thing that ultimately destroys AAA and destroys these bigger games because people don't want that kind of life anymore, and developers have made it clear that they aren't going to stand for that long term. Especially, when I first joined Electronic Arts, which makes a ton of games, my senior VP, who's a woman, told me that after she had her infant son, she came straight from the delivery room and she had like an infant baby in swaddling clothes under her desk while she was like coding and writing emails, and then she would like go sleep under her desk with her baby and wake up to breastfeed and then go work some more. I think those days are over for the most part. Like, I won't say they're totally over, but they're definitely diminishing.
For me, it's a multifaceted question because I've contracted Microsoft in the past, and I would never crunch for Microsoft. Like, I'm not going to give up my own sanity and my health and my personal time outside of work to make somebody else's game. But right now, I work in a 7-man studio, and I absolutely don't mind staying late because I know that the things that I'm doing are going to make an impact. I know that my role, especially as a lead, is important to the success of the project, and so I'm much more willing to stay later and to work harder to accomplish those goals. And so it really depends on where you're working. But even then, there's a point where I'm not going to let a job ruin my sanity and ruin my health. I have a friend who works at a startup, and she just got moved down to Mountain View, California, and she's moving back up now because she quit because it was insane, like the amount of hours they're asking her to work and the things they're putting her through. So even if it's a passion project, still know your limits and know when to step off and say, I'm just not going to do it. You can say no. The worst they're going to do is fire you and then you work somewhere else, but It's not the end of the world.
Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Well, I think it really depends on the studio because ours, we've made so many, we've been around for so long that our cycle is really set in stone. I mean, we know exactly what we can do when we do it. And yeah, there's a crunch time at the end, but it's, and poor testing has to work like every day for a month and a half. But outside of that, everybody knows it's coming, they know when it's going to happen, and they can start planning around it. It's really about how you plan stuff out. Make sure you stick to your schedule. That's the key.
Right.
Not that easy though.
It's not. No. You can really get some wrenches in there, but
I mean, unfortunately, like the thing is, like you can plan as much as you want, and it's good to do certainly. But like in our case, it's a lot of like you're working with other publishers or somebody. They always bring some kind of a demo that you didn't know about, and it's need to be done in another week, and that's when you're crunching. That's the time that something that you didn't know that you have to do it, and now you have to do it. So, but like Zach said, like if you really like what you do, you don't mind. Like if you're a writer and you're writing your own book, you work all the time, kind of in your head. So and actually, in a lot of companies, they allow to work from home too. So a little bit you can, like if you're a concept artist, you can draw from home. Then you bring your concept art, and it's really you don't have to stay in the studio.
I think it's important to draw the distinction between like these other people have said, like between the crunch time that happens when you're at the end, you just want to work a little bit harder to make sure that you get this thing done, versus building in crunch time into the main development schedule, which is what a lot of other studios deal with, and that's just nowhere. That's not going to succeed and keep people healthy. Like you can pick one or the other.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm a lead on the Xbox platform team, and I do 10, 12 hours a day there, and I'm kind of able to do my own independent game development when I'm not either working or with my family, with my 3-year-old son, trying to be involved in his life. And the thing that I'm having a tough time grappling with, and I'm wondering if any of you have the experience, how do you leave that pretty decent job with lots of money and go and jump into the game industry as an independent developer? I see the idea that I have, it's coming to fruition, but it's like 2 or 3 years away. And I know that if I just had 6 months, I can make a lot more progress, but it's really tough to leave that cushy position. And so I'm just wondering if you guys have anything that you could speak to on that.
Yes, actually directly. So about 2 years ago, before I joined 17-bit, I was contracting at Microsoft, and I was making more money than I knew what to do with. And I felt guilty going to work because I wasn't doing work that was worth that amount of money, and I could have paid off my loans, which are still 5 years away now, in 8 months if I just stayed there. And then this job came up, and I was like, well, I know it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, because we're also, not only we're making a pretty awesome game, but we're going to move the studio to Japan, and there's like lots of things going on that I want to be involved in. And so I just pulled the trigger. I just took the plunge and quit. And it's a little scary because you're saying goodbye to so much money, so much stability, so much stuff that you think you can't live without. But for me, that's not worth the regret of waking up every day and thinking like, man, I'm not doing the thing that I really want to do. And to me, that's worth more than that. And having a family totally changes those priorities. When you have someone depending on you, 2 people depending on you, it's not the same equation. Yeah. So I'm not saying that's the right choice. But if you do decide to quit, I know that there's a whole community of independent developers here in Seattle that would love to support you and meet you and help you however they can.
Yeah, meetup.com has been great.
Yeah.
We also host a monthly social at 17-bit. We work in a big warehouse, and so every month we have like 60 or 70 indie developers get together and drink and chat and just share stories. And
maybe I'll hit you up afterwards.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So I was an FTE at Microsoft, and I did the same thing. Microsoft's FTE moonlighting policy would not allow me to work on side projects at the same time. As you know, they will take the rights to whatever you make because you were an employee there. So when I left, I intentionally took a job at a smaller studio that I knew would like sustain my day job, and then I worked on the weekends, just 4 hours a week on Sundays. And I started getting my team together, building my company, and now we've been working on this game that I have on the side for 1.5 years, and we're getting close to like Kickstarter and all this stuff. And I've never left working a day job. So I have this. If you have children and you have a family, like this is always my fear, right? Is like I have so much debt that like I don't know that I personally could make the jump to full indie. But I've intentionally taken day jobs that were A, permissive of me working on something on the side, and B, like I knew up front, like Her Interactive, we have such a solid ship cycle that I knew I wouldn't be required to work the level of crunch that I would have to at Microsoft. So I've been working on my side game Elsinore for weeks and weeks and months now, and it's grown into this full game, and I've never left a salary position.
There is I don't know if you know Ty Taylor, if you've heard of him before. His game The Bridge is in the indie game exhibit upstairs, and he did exactly what you described. He worked full time at Microsoft, making his game on the side, and then quit once he launched it, and now he's doing it full time. And now he brought on another friend who also works at Microsoft, who's working there full time, who's helping him with his second game. So you may want to, maybe he can give you some guidance on how to circumnavigate the moonlighting policy.
Okay, great, thanks.
So I know it's possible.
Yeah.
It is possible.
All right, any other questions? Yeah, go
Just
ahead.
real quick for Kathy and Katie, is your company expanding, and are you planning to go beyond your current offerings?
Well, we always like looking around at what our other possibilities are. We can't really say what we're going to be doing in the future, but you know, our eyes are open to the other platforms and other opportunities.
Yeah, here's the fun thing about games is when you start making them, you sign this agreement called an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and it means that you can never talk about what you're working on. So you go to parties with game developers and they're like, what are you working on? And you're like, I can't say. What are you working on? I also cannot say. And so you kind of like hear rumors of things that are happening, but you're not supposed to ever talk
So
about
do you
it.
go beyond the Nancy Drew, or?
Currently, we are strictly Nancy Drew.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions?
So since there's so much interest in the game industry right now and people working in the game industry, do you guys think that there are enough jobs to sustain that interest, or will the industry have to grow bigger?
Well, the industry right now is as big, or it doesn't need to get bigger to let you make your game. That's the best part. Like if you work at, we all work at full-time game development studios, but like we mentioned earlier with Unity, with Game Maker, with everything, we can grow the industry as much as it needs to be grown by ourselves if we want to. So yeah, there are definitely, after the events of the last few years and the economy going the way it goes, like there was a while where there were way too many people for the amount of jobs in like AAA and like full-time game development. But at the same time, those tools did expand enough so that shouldn't, hopefully it's not really an issue anymore, except if you want to make a salary, which is kind of important. But yeah, it doesn't need to get any bigger than what it is right now. I would argue that it probably shouldn't, because it's in some of what Katie was saying, like it's kind of groaning under its own weight right now, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, to me, it's not a question of growing the industry. It's if the market for games can sustain it, because there are so many games out there right now. It's not like that number is shrinking. It's only growing. It's only getting bigger. And there's something like, is it 100, 110, 120 new iPhone games being released every day? It's some absurd number. What?
500.
500 every day?
Yeah.
You guys are kidding me.
I just looked at, yeah.
And like, how do you compete with that? The only way to compete with that is to make something that is so far above the bar that it just jumps out from all the rest, or hope that you get lucky and that's a 1 in a million shot. And so that to me is the more interesting question: is how do you continue making awesome games but standing out from the rest? Because we're at the point now where there's a really cool new indie game coming out every week, and it's hard to keep up with that. I have 50 games in my Steam backlog that I'm never going to play, probably, because I just don't have time.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer to that question. It's just something that bothers me and keeps me up at night, because it's.
I think the market will be able to sustain the talent as long as we continue to expand the kinds of audiences that we're making games for. I think most people, when they think of video games now, they think of like dudes ages 13 to 30 playing like, a shootery, like shoot 'em up game in their basement, right? If I talk to most women my age and I'm like, hey, do you play games? They're like, not really. It's not really my thing. It's kind of weird. It's kind of geeky. So I'm always thinking about what kinds of experiences can I make that would get tomorrow's generation of women my age on board and wanting to play. How can we create new kinds we basically need to make the genre respected enough that people see it like movies where there's something for everyone. And I think that's where it's going to be able to grow.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.